One thing I recognized early on is your network is your net worth.
I am unwilling to give up. That I will start over from scratch as many times as it takes to get where I want to be.
You just want to make sure you will get knocked down, but just make sure you don't get knocked out.
So your only choice should be go focus on what you can control.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Kara Goldin Show. Join me each week for inspiring conversations with some of the world's greatest leaders. We'll talk with founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and really some of the most interesting people of our time. Can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hi, everyone. It's Kara Goldin from The Kara Goldin Show, and I am so excited to have my next guest here. We have Tracy Holland here, who is executive chairman and co-founder at HATCHBEAUTY, which is a brand incubator, and we will get into that in a few minutes. But Tracy is also a member of YPO, and we have met each other through the great YPO women's group that's out there. Woohoo! The women of YPO. And anyway, I'm very excited to be interviewing her today and having her share a little bit about her story. But just a quick bio on Tracy. So as I mentioned, she's the founder and executive chairman, and she's an entrepreneur with a very big global track record of incubating and launching brands. And she's dedicated her career to creating new brands and success stories, especially for women entrepreneurs. After holding many executive positions at a lot of big name companies, she co-founded HATCHBEAUTY to really incubate these brands in 2009. And she has since led highly successful development strategies and launches for many popular brands, which I know she'll get into. She was also awarded the 2019 Fashion and Beauty Award for Beauty Service Provider of the Year. And she was an EY Entrepreneur of the Year in 2017 in LA area. Is it technically?
In LA. Yeah.
So I was the same year in San Francisco.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, and pretty wild. And she's also elected to the Committee of 200, an organization of the most successful women business leaders globally. And now Tracy is taking on the podcast world, and with her soon-to-be podcast From Potential to Powerhouse. Very excited, launching this year. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, totally. I'm very excited that you are here. So first of all, talk to us. What is a brand incubator?
I know, right? It's so funny because now it's in the food space. It's much more prevalent to be incubation focused. And Trader Joe's is a great example of a really interesting incubator, right?
Totally.
Of products and foods. And we've appreciated that for 20 years as consumers. But you know, what I saw in beauty a decade ago was the fact that there were lots of consumer brands that were prevalent, but there was really not a place for retailers to go and sit at the table in the beginning iterative stages of developing a brand for their core customer. And these retailers have loyalty cards. And so they know their customer and they understand their customer, but they didn't have any place to go to kind of sit and say at the lab stage where they're in development to say, here's our customer opportunity. Help us really iterate for this very niche space. And at that time, but this is really pre-Facebook and pre-Instagram. So we happened to think about how do we take what we know in the LA, we live in LA, and the celebrity world of influencers. And at that time, Elle Magazine and Cosmo and Vogue and all of these runways, the fashion runways in New York and Paris, how do we take that ethos and bring that into a retail setting and create a brand with a retailer that feels like an authentic third-party brand that may be quasi-exclusive to that retailer, where they put this in the best space and location in their store and they promote it as if it's a third-party brand. When really behind the scenes is it's definitely not private label. It's definitely not a control brand. It's an independent brand. We own it. but the retailer really gets to collaborate in the development.
Interesting. So what's the difference between launching a brand and maybe incubating a brand like what you're talking about?
I would say the only real difference is that initially, a decade ago, the retailer would underwrite the P&L by giving us a forecast and a commitment on a PO for a certain number of units, for a certain space and location in the store, with certain signage and a certain kind of understanding, handshake, that we wouldn't take that brand to their direct competitor.
Interesting. So it's typically coming from the retailer.
It's the need for the opportunity for the categories definitely was retailer driven. But I would say that the collaborative nature of co-creating a brand with a retailer at that time, especially, 10 years ago when, you have the large Unilevers and you have the P&Gs and you have the L'Oreals and you have the Lauders. At that time, when we first started this work, there was really no one to sit and collaboratively co-create a brand that would also think through all of the fast to market aspects of what it takes to launch a brand. So because we had our own laboratory, we had our own manufacturing facility, we were really boots on the ground and we could fly the airplane and fix it at the same time.
Interesting.
And so we could get out to market in 9 months on a concept that we had thought of 9 months earlier, do surveying, do customer feedback, do creative, do packaging, do design, formulating compatibility, stability, and then run a marketing plan that would then launch it at the retailer level on an exclusive basis, on an end cap with all the bells and whistles that a third-party brand would have. But at the beginning, we didn't have any money.
Right.
So we had no investor. And you know how much money it takes to launch a brand, right?
So you were typically, so just so I understand, so you're raising money for Hatch Beauty. This is an idea. So you're from a retailer. It's often, the idea is often coming from them. They're guaranteeing some kind of space in the stores, but you're going out and raising your own funding.
I didn't need to, because what I would do is take the purchase order as well as the purchase commitment for the first year of forecast. And I would turn around to my vendors and say, I need 120-day terms. And I would turn around to my bank and say, I'm going to be forecasting a $10 million plan. And here's my plan, how many SKUs and how much I'm going to need in terms of a revolver. And here's my purchase order. So I need you to factor this or finance it for me. And so I didn't raise, I think we got to 75 million in revenue before we started even thinking about.
Wow, that's amazing. And in some cases, you would also take these brands then out to other retailers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. It's very, very cool. So can you share some of the brands that you've done?
Sure. Yeah. It's been such a privilege because what's so strange, and I know you understand this because I just read your book and it was blowing my mind, because actually some of the pain points that you've been through feel so familiar. And whether you're in beverage or in beauty or in, I'm guessing in gardening or in any kind of category, right? What you don't realize is you don't know what you don't know until you get so far in.
Totally.
That you think, I really need to, I'm excited because if I can just get this big key account, then I'm going to be able to finance my growth to the next stage and I'm going to get where I need to be. So we were really lucky in 2010. Trader Joe's was one of our first key accounts. And so if you use their lemon hand soap or their botanical hand soaps or whatever it may be, we were one of the first iterative, creative and kind of incubation partners in the HABA category to Trader Joe's.
I know that product. It's good. It's a good product. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And Trader Joe's had such an innovative perspective on all the categories that they do because they're such innovation experts. But what their focus was a decade ago was obviously food. So we came in and said, hey, we can do this for you in the beauty space. And I think we've established a deep and great partnership there in which we've, helped grow that business. And that's been a huge partner of ours. So back in 2010, that was our first partner. Our second partner was CVS. And that relationship started with Selma Hayek's brand of Nuance. And we co-created that brand with them and with Selma. And there were so many learning lessons from that business relationship. And in hindsight, I wish I could have gone back to my 10-year-old 10 years ago and talked to my younger self and said, here are the things you should know. Be careful, do this, don't do that. But some of the brands that we have now, Nature Well is probably our biggest brand. Nature Well is started off as a topical brand and then has moved into ingestibles. So about 2 years ago, we started a wellness and ingestible division. So we also do teas and tinctures and supplements and powders, everything that kind of helps women and men optimize their regimen from the inside out.
That's awesome.
So Nature Well is probably the most well-known. We have Orlando Pita Hair Care. We have Found, which is a naturally derived skin and body and color brand. But then we just started Found Active. We're launching with Kate Upton. In the next week, you'll see it launching on direct-to-consumer. And then we'll be launching at retail. We have other smaller brands, but I would say that's the bulk of our income.
That's very, very cool. Now, when you are working with a celebrity, are they coming to you, or are you typically going to them and saying, hey, we've got this idea and we want somebody to partner with us on this?
In the beginning, I would say we would have to knock on a lot of doors. And in the very beginning, I think Salma Hayek was truly one of the first. Nuance Salma Hayek in 2011, we won Mass Brand of the Year for WWD. Tom Ford, I think, won for Prestige that year. That really put us on the map for co-creating a celebrity-driven brand, because really no one had ever done that at that time. And we looked at that opportunity with Salma and said, how do we build this business relationship with her and with CVS? And I think that learning, as I mentioned, was a massive one in so many ways. That was a good learning ground for us. But I would say today, we meet with celebrities frequently. I think that's only one part of the component of what makes a brand successful. It really has to authentically resonate and come from the person who's involved as our partner and founder. It can't just be something Hatch Beauty invents and then kind of slaps a person's name on. It needs to really be incubated truly with that celebrity's core and authentic passion.
Yeah.
And they have to be in the kitchen with us.
Yeah. No, I totally see that and agree. So prior to living in this world, what was your background?
It's so funny. When I grew up as, I think, an entrepreneur my whole childhood, like I remember my first coming to my dad and saying, I have this idea to create a store, and the store is going to carry all these various products. And I kind of imagined a store where you could buy food and all these other things. And that's when I was like probably 9 or 10. And I did the retail schematic, and I had kind of done a store strategy. And, I started a pie business when I was 13. And I, would start making pies, and I'd send my sisters out door to door to collect orders and bring samples to neighbors and then collect orders. And that lasted about 3 months. My dad shut that business down because I took over the kitchen, and we'd have to eat meals out every night. And finally he's like, I'm paying your cost of goods. Let me explain what cost of goods means.
Was your dad in kind of that business or no?
No, he was a nuclear physicist and he was in defense. And, my parents both had PhDs, and they were really hardworking, but very corporate folks. I mean, my dad was definitely the one who would say, the ideal is you get a great job, you get a 401k, you go up through the management track, you're going to get promoted. And I think by the time I got to be about 15, I was just not, I didn't fit in, to the family. And so my parents actually sent me to reform school for 2 years. And I did a lot of hard labor. We did, trust falls and wilderness survival trips. And they kind of tried to, the school itself really had a focus of like how to get the kids to conform to rules and to be part of the kind of the norm, And so when I graduated from high school, my father was coaching me on what corporate job I was going to get. And so I said, I'm not even sure I want to go to college. And so I took a year off. I mean, my parents were just, can you imagine, 2 PhDs?
And people were not doing that back then. I mean, people are today, right? But people were like, wait, what?
No,
She's got
my
it. We got to
parents-
save her.
No. And so Dad said, okay, so you're not getting a penny from me. And if you decide you want to go to college, you call me and I'll help you financially. But so I waited tables for a year. And I'll never forget when I went into work one day, I worked at a place called Adele's, and there was a uniform, a black skirt, white shirt, and a burgundy apron. And I actually liked waiting tables because it meant, connecting with people. You were in a hurry, you were delivering food, you had a lot going on. And I always had the busiest section. And I made great tips. But my boss came in to me and he said, your skirt's too long. And if you don't hike your skirt up, thigh level or above, you don't have a job tomorrow. Swear.
Wow. Crazy.
And I thought,
where were you living?
Healdsburg.
In Healdsburg.
California.
Okay.
This tiny town, such a great place. And I'll never forget. I thought, my God, I'm being told that my livelihood is dependent upon me showing my legs. And there was this aha moment. I think the benefit I had was I had 2 parents who were well educated. So I knew there was another side to this, that there could be an alternative for me, that if I chose to go to college, I could go up through a professional career track and I could shift my future. But at that time, had I not had the exposure to 2 PhD parents and had been, gone to work, and I try to imagine if my mom had been a waitress and my father had been a blue collar and, I was told to hike my skirt up or I wouldn't have a job the next day, I would hike my skirt up. Yeah. But instead I told him, screw you. I didn't come back, to work the next day. And I thought, shit, I better get myself into college or this is probably not going to be great.
This is it. Yeah. Yeah. This is where it goes.
Because Dad was not fielding calls for money. Right. He wasn't going to say, no problem, babe, I got you. I'll write you a check until you find your next gig. There was one option. So I went to the Fashion Institute of Design for my first 2 years of undergrad. I did my AA there in San Francisco. And I remember, it was the first time I realized I was smart. I started to go to college and I thought, I didn't think I was that smart. My impression of myself at that time, because I hadn't been successful in school, was that I was, maybe kind of didn't have the smart gene. And so it was my first time I remember in college thinking, I think I could probably compete here and be pretty smart. And when I went to the center that was helping place graduates from FIDM, the college counselor at the time, I was telling her, I think I want to go get a bachelor's degree. I think I want to transition. And I'm really, interested in foreign policy. I'm going to apply. And she said, you don't need to do that. You just paid a fortune for an AA. You should go out and get in a management track at one of the retailers that are recruiting. Neiman's has an incredible management track there. And, you could leave here and go get a great paying gig. So why you don't need, you're at the prime of your life.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know if I'm making the right choice, but I just continued on the academic path because I kept challenging my beliefs that I wasn't very smart. And every time I got honors or Phi Beta Kappa or, and I thought, my God, I'm competing against people who I really think are smart. And I think at that time I had imposter syndrome without even knowing what imposter syndrome was. Because I kept showing up at school going, I get great grades and I think, fuck, is this real?
Yeah. That is so,
Did I earn
hysterical.
It? Yeah.
That is so great.
Yeah.
And so how did you move from that then?
So I spent a year in Spain between undergrad and graduate school. My parents were mortified. I had a calling to go to Spain. I pivoted. I was supposed to go to China, and Hillary Clinton was there during that period of time as this kind of outspoken woman. And I remember China saying that they were going to hold off on issuing visas. And so when I went to get my visa, I had a single entry visa, which didn't sound like a good idea because I would be there for a year. And I didn't want to go into China without a way to get out and
For sure. Yeah.
for the entire year. So I pivoted to Spain. I spent a year there. I came back. I worked on the Clinton Gore campaign and I helped Michaela Alioto and Virginia Strom Martin at the time, who was working to be a first assemblywoman. And I was really passionate about politics. And when I came back, I was in the Bay Area and I thought, I should probably go to grad school because it seems like the right thing to do. And I don't know where the political realm will lead me, but during that time, I met a woman who was a forensic chemist, and she had a vision for changing the way nail polish was invented. Really, she had a formula and a foresight for nail polish, and it actually came up with a conversation she was having and saying, nail polish doesn't smell good. And she and I talked about it, and then she said, I think I could reformulate this. And she did. She reformulated nail polish to be scented. And at that time, I thought, this is really an interesting opportunity. I wonder if anyone's ever done this. So I took some money from my graduate school loans that they were offering. And then I went out and hired someone to do some patent research. And there was no patent on scented nail polish at the time. And so I basically launched with her the first business and help grow and drive the idea around scented nail polish using my student loans from Columbia to help underwrite the first business together. And that business ended up failing. We ended up closing it. I ended up having to pay off my loans. The intellectual property ended up getting sold, but all the business assets got, we folded after a couple of years, but it was really the first time that I realized that there was a need for innovation, B, an appetite from the consumer for something similar but different than what was out there. Hint water, right? Water is water, but when you tweak it and you make it special and unique, all of a sudden people can't get enough of it. And nail polish, everybody has it and they know what the aspects of using nail polish are, but it doesn't smell great. And so being able to make it smell like chocolate or grass or peanut butter or roses. We sold a ton, like a lot. And it was like, this is so much fun.
And what happened to that business then?
So our first client was JCPenney. I'll never forget. This is how I learned how to finance purchase orders because JCPenney gave us a purchase order for almost $400,000. And here I was living in this 10 by 11 studio on 91st and Broadway. And I had my samples piled up, all my scented nail polish, which was like, by the way, flammable. Right. And so it's sitting. I had a phone that had 2 rings. One was like my personal ring, which was a 1 ring. And then when it rang twice, that meant it was like a buyer or a retailer because it had a second ring. So it would go ring, ring. And I'd say, sentimental, can I help you? So we built that business together. And she had her job by day at the Department of Justice, literally on CSI sites, digging up dead bodies. And I was in grad school. And then, I would take my classes Tuesday, Thursdays. I was in 15 units, but I would stack it from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I could get my classes so I could go meet retailers Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Get on the airplane, fly out, fly back. And I did that for the first 2 years. And my first purchase order from JCPenney, which was like $400,000. Of course, like we couldn't fund that. So we went to the vendor, we showed them the purchase order. They bought the glass for us because normally they wouldn't do that, but they bought the glass, the brushes, and the caps. They screened them, they filled them, they paid for the shippers, and then they gave us net 60 terms. And then I turned around to the purchase order and I used my first ever factor. I didn't even know what a factor was, right?
Explain to people what a factor is for those that don't know what it is.
So it's just like taking your house and collateralizing it. It's taking a purchase order and you collateralize the purchase order for a very high interest rate. It's usually 1% to 2% per month. And they will do a Dun & Bradstreet sensitivity run on the actual purchase order to make sure that the retailer is still liquid because, that's an important consideration. That's what they're basically underwriting as collateral. And then they'll give you usually up to 70% of the purchase order in cash to purchase those things that you need. And then they'll give you the balance of the 30% right when it ships. And so for us, the liquidity of that asset, you know, the thing that's hairy about all this that nobody ever wants to really think about is what if, like, manufacturing, like what if something goes wrong, right? What if the glass is bad? What if the brushes are wonky? What if I had a FedEx truck full of product once run off the road and the entire container of goods got destroyed. And I thought, oh, no problem. That's Costco's freight. I'm sure that'll be covered by Costco.
But it's not.
Because even though it's their freight carrier pickup, they don't actually receive that asset until they get it into their DC.
Yeah. Lots of stuff can happen for sure. Yeah. Crazy,
right?
Crazy. It's insane.
It's insane.
So what happened in the end with that company then?
So I got left with a bunch of debt and I thought, crap.
So it didn't do well? Like it did
really well, but we just didn't when you start to think about the execution of a scented nail polish at retail, what it really requires and what retail requires is a human standing there and saying, hey, listen, this nail polish isn't just nail polish, it's scented. Try it, And so with a retailer like a JCPenney, that did not work for us because people didn't understand what the difference was. But Spencer's Gift, that did work for us because we were doing baby diapers and grass, and you can have this really gaudy sign that says nail polish, like baby diapers, and put some testers out and everybody snatched it up.
Gets all excited about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think you also point to something really interesting that I think a lot of people don't think about, which is that you have to, if you have a new category within any industry, and I really do believe this applies to any industry, you have to be very careful where you show up, right? And is that consumer ready to receive? So I would guess at Spencer, for example, you want different, right? You're willing to take a chance on it. I don't know if JCPenney, I mean, it's interesting. When we first started, we had a very big opportunity with Walmart and with a celebrity, actually, that was very interested and had great relationships and with Walmart. And we decided not to go into Walmart. And we're in Walmart today and it's great, and Sam's Club and everything's great. But I had started an unsweetened flavored water, and it was a brand new category. And I figured this out 2 months after launching our product. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and I said to the celebrity's agent, tell me what brands are developed inside of Walmart, because I can't think of any. But I want to know what they are, because I really I wanted to believe, but I couldn't think about it. And I think that what you talked about, I mean, it's interesting. You can have a great product.
Totally.
But you've been through this, right? But it has to be in a place that has to, and I still believe this to this day. Again, when you get to be a big enough established brand, where people have seen it show up at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Spencer's or whatever, then maybe you can go into some of these stores. But it's such an important journey for the product. And I've talked to so many people about this, entrepreneurs launching brands over the years. And it just really depends on your category, and it depends on if it's a new category anyway. But it sounds like a lot of what you experienced, but you learned a lot, 100%. Right? Along the way.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
You survived and got through that. And so what was your next point after that?
We did, and I say we because I pulled a lot of the people I had leaned on for scented nail polish. What that gave me was a Rolodex of retailer contacts as well as a network of vendor contacts. And really my biggest private label client at the scented nail polish company was Elizabeth Arden under their sunflower fragrance. I developed a scented top coat that was sunflower fragrance developed or based. And getting those contacts, learning the ways of the world, like getting to meet the CEO at the time of French Fragrances, who then became the CFO of Elizabeth Arden. You know, one thing I recognized early on is your network is your net worth.
Totally.
And your reputation and who you are and who you show up as in the world is mission critical to maintain integrity and continue to even say the bad news first. Mm-hmm. If there's bad news, and that's been with my retailers and that's been with my vendors, because it's the trust that develops and that builds that gave me the momentum and the latitude to continue to build a business. And so even though scented nail polish didn't work, I went on to find the first ever Sprayon hosiery. It was an air silk, and it was a hydrolyzed silk aerosol-based spray-on hosiery. And I heard about it, and I got on an airplane. I was actually VP of sales of a hair care company at the time. So I had gone to take a traditional job so that I could just pay my bills and then pay off my debt.
That's good.
Loans.
You're scrappy and you knew what you had to do.
So I went in and I took a day gig, and then I heard about this spray-on hosiery, and I thought, what the hell? And I was trying to imagine it, and someone had come back from Japan and said, oh my God, it comes in a can, you shake it, it's hydrolyzed silk, and it comes out in an aerosol, and it looks like hosiery on your leg, like you can't tell the difference. So Amazing. Of course, I take sick time. I get on an airplane and go to Tokyo. I've never been to Japan. I'm like, I'm going to find this stuff, right? So I end up tracking down the owner and the inventor of the spray-on hosiery. And I learned so much about the Japanese culture and just how they do business. But, this man was an inventor in Japan. That's so very rare, right? An entrepreneurial inventor who just kind of comes up with things. And so I went there, and I ended up partnering with a very large billion-dollar company called Senshukai, who underwrote the inventory and became the distributor partner. And we went into a JV, and then we got the distribution rights for that product in the United States, ended up getting it for Canada, Central and South America, as well as Mexico. And so for a couple of years, imported millions of cans. That was my first $1 million income for me personally. I was 31. I would start moving container loads of air silk and air stocking product. Wow. And I realized this is super interesting. I love innovation, but I also love the idea that, retailers are hungry for something new and unique. And if well communicated, they will be excited to participate. And that's what I have built my career on, is frankly seeing opportunities or innovation in the market in a particular space. And it's always been in consumer, obviously, but bringing that to retail first, and then kind of creating a category that may not exist. And at that time, it didn't exist, spray-on hosiery. So it ended up getting knocked off by Sally Hansen. And I mean, I don't like to say knocked off, because the world comes up with ideas all at the same time. And sometimes, zeitgeist, things come into the market. But we had quite the distribution at that time, almost 32,000 doors. And that was a couple of years of a great business and a great run. And then from there, I started my own business. So, I mean, that was my own business, but then I started becoming my own company that would innovate and develop product after that, rather than find people who did it,
How did you find the courage at that point to just go and do it on your own? Do you remember that day when you just said, you know what, maybe I should just do this and set up my own factory and just kind of do it?
So courage is weird. I don't know if that's the right word, because I think entrepreneurs typically, I've found, run on either blind ego and completely out of bounds on what could happen. And they're just kind of like these visionaries, and they don't care necessarily what the implications of, they just have to go fulfill the vision, or they run out of fear, right? And they're fear-based, meaning I came from a household where I needed to create wealth for myself because I knew once I could, I would have the freedom of choice because my childhood was not, it was tough, right? So for me, wealth always meant freedom. And I think the courage came from a place of saying, it can't be this bad. So I know I can make it better doing anything I'm going to do because like you've already done it to me. So I can, screw.
And what's the worst that can happen? Right? I mean, I ask myself all the time. So I still do to this day.
Right?
Yeah.
It's totally true. And there was this part in your book that I have to tell you, I just resonated with. And if you don't mind, I want to pull it up because it really, there's this one section that you said, and I think as if there are entrepreneurs listening to this, I want them to really hear this because I laugh. And then at the same time, this is a pang inside of me because I believe that what you're saying here is so true. You said on chapter 13, believe in your product. And then you say, when can you be sure that your company is flying high and out of danger? Never.
Yeah. It's true. It is true. And that is what you sign up for.
Look at Kodak, right? Look at, I mean, we could go down a list of the need to reinvent and there's no place in which you're scot-free. And I think that where the courage to get up every day and just put one foot in front of the other, the thing that keeps me excited about what we do is the people that I get to work with.
And you love what you're doing. Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a sobriety to knowing that I'm maybe 3 decisions away from the things careening off to the left or to the right, potentially, right? And that at least that's how I interpret it or it feels. And then I look at, even just what's happened in the world with COVID in the last, 12 months and what's happened to our world. When I sit back and think about the forecast that I built in 2018 or 2019 going into 2020, I was like, I'm a decade in this, man. I could, here's my forecast. Like, here you go, bank. Like, here you go, investor. Here you go, everyone. And, then you're 9 weeks into the quarter and you hear about a hotspot and you're thinking, is this happening? Like, is there a problem? And there is a problem, right? And your entire world shifts. So I think it's kind of what we sign up for as humans.
Yeah. It's something else that I've really grown to think more and more about, and particularly through me talking about my book. Actually, I've picked up a lot of, in addition to writing a book, but so much more that I've realized about myself. And when I left my last job at AOL, I was saying things like, I was bored. I was, ready to move on, right? There were all these things. I had built this great business. It had gone through a hockey stick. I had young kids at home. I thought, you know what? I'm just not into it anymore. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm ready, right? But then when I stumbled upon my own problem that I had around diet soda, and I knew I was supposed to be drinking water, but I wasn't doing it, then I swapped it out, made this shift from not drinking diet soda to drinking plain water, was bored with water, and then realized that was the solution to the problem. Then I just assumed I just had missed it on the shelf. I even thought that I was going to the wrong stores. I drove all over San Francisco where I lived and looked on the East Coast, everything, and it wasn't there. And so, but it's funny because I would tell my friends in tech, because my whole circle was in tech at that time, that I'm, really curious about this. And they were like, okay, so anyway, so Yahoo wants you to come and Google and everything. And I was like, wait, come back to this whole thing around diet soda and how I've had this realization. And I didn't know, like, talk about, being 3 steps away from, hanging off of a cliff. I felt like I was hanging off a cliff, but every morning I woke up with this curiosity. And so I go back now to where I was when I was leaving tech. I wasn't learning anymore. And I think it's something that so many people miss as they grow in the corporate ladder or they get older, right? They're just not learning. And people call it not interested, bored, whatever. But I think that is what entrepreneurism brings to so many people, that you had no idea what you were doing most of the time when you entered. No. And it was a little scary, and you put yourself into situations, right, where you were uncomfortable, right? But it clearly wasn't not exciting, right? I mean, it's just some days were not so good, right? And some days were successful, but I believe, just by hearing your story, that you can't say that you weren't learning.
Oh my gosh, still. I mean, still, I'm raising capital. I brought an investment partner, private equity partner, into the business in March of 2019.
Oh, wow.
So we were already 9.5 or 10 years old at that point. Mm-hmm. And even that process of, putting together a sim, sitting down and pitching your business, explaining who you are and why you believe that the business has this next iterative step, and, having someone write a multi-million-dollar check to participate and be part of that process with you. And then what it means to now have a financial partner, an institutional partner who, by the way, has LPs that invest in them that they then deploy capital under. Yeah. And they have a whole series of requirements. So learning that, understanding what the cap table implications are, what it means to run a formal board meeting. Mm-hmm. I've been so fortunate that Christy Hefner has been my mentor. She's chairman of the board of HATCHBEAUTY and has been for about 7 years. So she's the person who taught me how to run a formal, appropriate board meeting. I mean, I just thought, I can't believe this is better than a Harvard MBA. Yeah, I get to sit and listen to her.
Are you part of C200 as well?
I am. Yes.
Yeah, I am too. But I didn't realize that you were. That's another great women's organization. And I know Christy's she's a co-founder of it. So
she's amazing.
Yeah, I haven't actually met her, but I've heard amazing things about her. That is so cool. So I love how you took control of your own destiny, and you're continuing to learn and running an amazing, amazing company. And you're you're such an inspiration, and you've just got so many ideas here that I think are solutions and ideas that really will be super helpful for people to hear. So what would you say is 2021 for you? Like, how are you thinking about 2021 and just for you personally, for Tracy?
So I had 3 amazing kids, and I'm so fortunate because you have to figure out how to squeeze this fertility thing in, by the way. I love the OB meeting that I had at 34 when he said, "Oh, you're going to have kids?" And I said, "Of course." And he's like, "Well, you're not married, and how are you going to do that?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, I have plenty of time."
Yeah.
And he's like, no. Let me tell you the math on how ovaries work and how ovulation is. And assuming you were at 100% fertility, you might be able to be okay, but you still don't have a partner. And I thought, holy smokes, like,
how is that gonna, all work?
Yeah. So I've been so grateful to have had the opportunity to be a mom, because I think if you have had a tough childhood, the idea of creating family for me and having the nurturing mom aspects of myself become my human part of my day to day. And it's something that I feel is part of my legacy. And, the idea of saying, I'm not going to perpetuate this cycle. I'm going to do this differently. And just because I had this experience doesn't mean that the next iteration of family has to. And, that was courage, right? Yeah, I think having children and feeling like, what if I screw this up? I consider really the courageous part. But
how old are they now?
They're 9, 11, and 14.
Oh my God. That's so amazing. So you're raising them on your own?
Yes, I am. I mean, their dad is really involved, and he has them part-time. I have them part-time, and that relationship is really good. And that's beautiful, because I think it does take a village to raise children, and whatever that village looks like, 2 men, 2 women, family, extended family, however that needs to look. It's like the posse that makes it work.
Yeah.
But that that has been the biggest focus for me for 21. And I would say also for the last 2.5 years, I've been on a deep, I would say, wellness journey, mind, body, heart and head coherence, thinking about ways to expand my human nature, my humanness in this body that I've been given for as long as I get to use it.
I love it.
And figuring out how to make an impact and help encourage women, especially who may think, oh, I can't do this, or it's not for me, or I'm not smart enough, or I came from a broken home, or I don't have the resources, or, that actually there is 100% an opportunity to make a shift and do exactly what it is you want to do. And it's actually not overnight. It takes way longer than you think it's going to.
Yeah. Yeah, always, right? It's just, I've had many people on that have said the exact same thing. So it is 1000% true. So where do people find you?
They can find me at Tracy Holland Mindset or at Potential 2, the number 2 Powerhouse. And that is the best way to reach me. And, I think as I've gone, and I got to go through a YPO spiritual experience in Oman last year. I did it 11 days, and it was
fun.
Their first, kind of spiritually focused retreat with YPOers. And that was life-changing. I mean, on every level.
I hope those will start up again. That sounds amazing.
Oh my gosh.
So great.
I think we're going to do Bali. I think if you can come, you should. Dave Asprey came last time. It was so much fun. There were so many amazing people there.
I love it. So I want to close it up and stay tuned. But if you loved this episode, which I did very, very much, thank you so much, Tracy, for being on. And definitely give 5 stars. And we'll see you here every Monday and Wednesday, everybody. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Thank you.
Before we sign off, I want to talk to you about fear. People like to talk about fearless leaders, but achieving big goals isn't about fearlessness. Successful leaders recognize their fears and decide to deal with them head on in order to move forward. This is where my new book, Undaunted, comes in. This book is designed for anyone who wants to succeed in the face of fear, overcome doubts, and live a little undaunted. Order your copy today at undauntedthebook.com and learn how to look your doubts and doubters in the eye and achieve your dreams. For a limited time, you'll also receive a free case of hint water. Do you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight? Send me a tweet at Cara Goldin and let me know. And if you like what you heard, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow along with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Cara Goldin. Thanks for listening.